Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Ronnie Chan. I'm the retired chairman of Hang Lung, so I should not be standing here. The present chair is, I understand, on email downstairs, so he asked me to fill it in. So that's why I'm standing here, I suppose. Welcome to the public lecture of the Hang Lung Mathematics Award. Many of you know that Hang Lung is a locally founded and run company, still very active in Hong Kong, as well as in the mainland of China. And we are very socially conscious. We do what we can to make our society better with whatever resources that we have been able to glean from this society. And so 20-some years ago, Professor Xing Yao, many of you know him, the Fields medalist from Hong Kong, from Beijing. And who's from Beijing here? Please raise your hands. Okay, that's your Dai Si Hing, okay? Your senior. Xing Yao eventually became the first Chinese to receive the Fields Medal in 1983, I believe it was. And he and I have founded a few things together. One of them is the Hang Lung Mathematics Award. I don't know mathematics, so I cannot opine on whether it's right or wrong, but Xing doesn't believe in all those Olympiad and all that stuff, you know, those how fast you think and how fast you can come up with one single number as an answer. So he came to me and said, I think we should do a program that stimulates thinking and research for high school students. And that's how we started. And over the last 20-some years, we have successfully run many programs. We have had a couple of 2,600 students, having produced really some fantastic papers. And we do have, because of Xing good name, we're able to bring other Fields medalists. Also, we have Professor Nick Rawlins, your predecessor, Nobel laureate, Sir James Malise at Chinese University. His deputy is sitting here, Professor Ann Huth. And so we have been able to really get some of the world's best to be involved in this program. But I must say that the ones that are really doing the job for this Hang Lung Mathematics Award are not these big names, people from around the world. We appreciate them. They are very wonderful. And Xing certainly provided the initial intellectual direction for this effort. But it's really a whole group, a whole bunch of local professors, mathematics professors, that are very instrumental in making us a success. We work closely with all the universities in Hong Kong. At the beginning, we worked very closely with Chinese University. We still do. And then we moved the headquarters to Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. And in both institutions, we found some of the most dedicated math professors I've ever met. And gleaning from all other major universities in Hong Kong, we have a group of very distinguished, and not just in mathematics, but also in their heart for students. So with that, I want to ask all those professors in the third row here, and elsewhere, if you're hiding, Raymond, Albert, and Frederick, and all of you who are involved in the running of this program, can you rise to be recognized? Ladies and gentlemen, the mathematics professors. Of course, there's another group that we should mention, and that is the high school principals and mathematics teachers. No matter how good a student is, without good, inspiring teachers, they may not be able to realize their full potential. And I must say that over the last 20-some years, one of the most inspiring things for me is really to meet some of the very best mathematics professors in high schools, mathematics teachers in high schools here. And it really gave me hope for the city, because we know that we have good teachers and we will churn out very good students. Now, obviously, you need the intellect, but being Chinese, almost by definition, they are not bad. They are pretty good. But of course, Hong Kong has also many others from South Asia and so forth, and we really welcome all of them. After running this program for 20 years, we thought that maybe we should broaden it now that we have established ourselves. A good name in Hong Kong, I like to think. And so my staff came up with this idea of doing a public lecture. and that is the standard is this. It has to be, they have to say things that I can understand. When the students write this research paper, I don't understand. All these X, Y, and whatever, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. You guys are just too smart for me. So for this public lecture, the standard is, if Ronnie Chan, this dumb guy, can understand, it's okay. So we try to bring it really down to the societal level so that anybody in Hong Kong can benefit and understand really what's going on. So over the past couple of years, last year actually, we did 3 programs already. The first one was called What is Good Research? It was chaired by my brother, who is far smarter than his brother, Dr. Gerald Chan from Harvard. And then speakers were Nancy Yip, the president of Hong Kong UST, and Professor Zhang Xiang, the president of Hong Kong University. The second program was a really interesting one. It's called The Good, Bad, and Beautiful of AI. If I had my judges, I would change the name. I would change it to The Good, Bad, and Ugly of AI. I think we need to study both the beauty as well as the ugliness of it. But anyway, for marketing purpose, we thought we'll spin it a little bit on the positive. We had an expert in AI from France, as well as our very own Professor Harry Shum, who is formerly in charge of AI at Microsoft and now the chairman of the Council of Hong Kong UST, a world leader. These two are world leaders on AI, and was moderated by a professor locally, and she is really good. I think she really made that program a success. Then we had the last program that it's called From Lab to Life, How Science Rewrites the World. And we feature some of the very, very best in Hong Kong. So, I mentioned Nancy Yip already, but she did not speak this time. We have Professor Dennis Low, now the new Chancellor of Chinese University, President of Chinese University, as well as my good friend, longtime friend of mine called David Ho, who is 1996 Man of the Year. He's the one who came up with the cocktail therapy for AIDS. So Dennis Dennis Low and David Ho had a wonderful, wonderful program on the biological sciences. Just for those of you, for your information, usually we hold a private dinner afterwards, which is part of the Asia Society, and we let Asia Society, I wear two hats, Asia Society let us have this room free, so we have to help them. So we do a private dinner where we have maybe 40-some people, where we have in-depth discussion, and you do have to pay a little bit for Asia Society in order to attend that one, but today it is free. So today's subject is the futures of universities. Some people say that with AI, why do you still need universities? What's the answer? I don't know. We're delighted that Professor Nick Rawlins from the Morningside College at Chinese University will moderate this discussion, and we're very, very honored that Professor Nancy Rothwell, a longtime friend of mine from Manchester University, just retired from Manchester University, and together with our very own, the former president of Hong Kong University, and also the founding president of the Hong Kong Academy of Sciences, right? Professor Lap-Chee Tsui will be in dialogue with Nick Rawlins. Before I step down, I just want to recognize a few people. Michelle Lee, the Secretary for Education Bureau in Hong Kong, will only be able to join us for dinner. So for those of you who are not joining dinner, you will miss her. We are delighted that we have Sophie Kao, a former member of the Central Policy Unit here. And also we also have Professor Duncan Iverson, the current president of Manchester University. I think you all know Nancy Kao, so there's no need to introduce her any further. But Duncan, why don't you stand to be recognized, President of Manchester University. So with that, I will invite Nick. Why don't you come up and to introduce our two speakers and to get the discussion going. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Professor Nick Rawlins.
I'd just like to thank you all for being here. I don't want to spend your time listening to me introducing my two very distinguished discussants, because you've already heard about them, and what you need to hear is them, not me. So I hope we'll give you an interesting time. Being in universities right now is certainly an interesting time, And I hope that we'll be able to reflect some of that. So, Nancy, may I invite you up? Nancy Rothwell. And Lap-Chee. Come on up and let's get to it. Do they work? Yes, this one works. I'm sure that everybody in this room has their own idea about what universities are really for and what their future might be and whether their past is admirable, disgraceful, or bizarre. But I want to start this discussion by asking both of my fellow panelists about what it's like, not university in the abstract. I don't want to, at this point, to think about that. I want to think about what it's like being the person responsible for running a university these days. They will have their own views about what universities should be about. I want to ask, but was it like that? Is the experience of running a university the way you thought it would be? What was it like facing the challenges that you will both, I know, have had? Student relations, difficulties with society around you, really. Were the difficulties we've had in the last few years just coping with an unusual blip, which we might hope COVID was? Or are they signs of something that's a change of state? Were you both dealing with something more lasting than just coping with an emergency? And I can make this question much more operational. Do you think your successors are going to have to face the same problems? So I'd like to start really with Nancy. What was it like? What did it feel like to be making Manchester University the fantastic success that it is and ensuring that it stayed there?
Thank you, great question. So if I may, I'm going to just answer the question you posed at the beginning, which is, what are universities for? In my view, universities here in Hong Kong, universities in the UK, not all universities, are there for public benefit. That is what they serve, the wider society. And in that sense, I do feel that it was as I expected, but of course, it doesn't feel like that on a day-to-day basis. As you go in the morning, and you do not know what is going to happen for the rest of the day. You don't know if your diary is going to become unraveled. All sorts of exciting challenges, shall I say, but also incredibly uplifting things as you meet a student from a disadvantaged background who's going to make it and be a great success, or somebody wins a big prize. Within 3 months of me starting, 2 of our staff won the Nobel Prize, which was amazing. Followed, I think, the following
Only 2?
during my tenure, only 2, yes. Yeah, 26 altogether. And then the following week, an unexploded bomb found in a building. So it is really ups and downs, highs and lows, unexpected. And I think there has been a shift, certainly in universities. We can come back to this, the funding, the expectations, both from governments, from students, from parents, from society. I think the biggest shift was obviously COVID. That was really big. And I think the biggest challenge and opportunity we're facing is artificial intelligence. I can come back to other points later.
Yeah, I think we will indeed pick up on both of those, both COVID and digital online learning. Lap-Chee.
Right. So it is really difficult to sort of answer your questions.
Good.
Right. First of all, I think I lived in a much easier time than now. And I was lucky to be circled around a group of very capable people. So I tend to work with people. I work in a laboratory from the start. I could do my own experiments. I enjoy it very much. But to do big piece of a project, I needed a lot of people. So to work with people, to use people's talent, you will say use, I think is a bad word, but to get the best and to work together. So sometimes I joke when reporters ask me the question, how's your life? I said, no, it's very well. I mean, for big problems, I have groups of people solving the problem. Okay? Each doing their own job. So therefore, you must have good people surrounding you. And for small problems, I couldn't sleep. What is a small problem? Well, one staff member said, I'm leaving, and happens to be really important member of a team. Then I have to solve the problem myself. So I couldn't sleep on small problems, but big problems, I don't lose any sleep because everybody worked on that. So when you talk about the university, today, because I'm not in it anymore, so in fact, it's more than 10 years since I retired, so I don't envy the current presidents. But somehow, I think the purpose of the university has not changed, right? As Nancy pointed out earlier, I mean, in my own words, it's really university has to remain relevant and impactful. And then you say, who is looking at this? Relevant to whom? To an individual, to a student, you guys? You want to choose a university, what you look for, right? And then you don't just listen to your teachers or your parents, right? And you ask governments? Okay, what is a government? I asked a question a long time ago. My colleagues in the audience may laugh. I asked the question, who's government? Okay, maybe a few politicians. What is university? What do you expect from university? And they have a whole set of criteria, and they give you all the reasons why you have to do this, do that. But that's not what really something that we want to see as university presidents. We all have our own high hopes or ideals, and how do you fulfill that when you first accepted the job? So I think that's maybe what we'll talk about later on.
Just briefly come back on that, because I agree with you, having fantastic people to solve your big problems. But I guess it's the same in Hong Kong, because in the UK, however big or however small the problem is, the buck stops with the Vice-Chancellor. And I always say, great successes are other people's celebrations and failures are your fault.
Right.
And I'm afraid that's a reality if you're a Vice-Chancellor.
Yeah, no, so you celebrate with them, right? So if they success, I stand behind them. I lead from behind. I stand behind the great professors. If they succeed, I take the glory too, right? So therefore, it's a big problems, it's not many, right? For me, but big problems, we have lots at the university.
I mean, one of the things that you've said, and perhaps an implication of what Nancy has said too, is that it does seem to me that you could make a case that universities are often asked to pick up society's pieces. And I would see that as distracting from the long-term view. You know, what do you really want to achieve? It isn't solving this afternoon's crisis. It's looking ahead and trying to keep the big picture in mind. I mean, did you both find could you keep the big picture in mind, or do the small matters like finding a bomb somewhere on the premises distract you?
Well, it didn't explode, so that was something at least.
Well, that was a failure then.
Yeah, you can get distracted by the here and now, and I think, but there are always events and occasions that pull you back and make you think. I know Duncan's just been at big alumni events on the mainland and another event, and that's when you think, gosh, this is why we're here. These hundreds of people who benefited, or graduation ceremonies. And that's when you step back and you think, no, this is the big picture. This is what we're all about. And then you go back to solving the problems on a day-to-day basis. But I think you can easily get distracted, and it's really important every now and again to pull yourself up and think, no, what really matters here? But just coming back to your point on picking up society's problems, that is certainly the case in the UK. Quite a number of years ago, we put a lot of money in, and still are doing, to a student-dedicated mental health centre. Now, we wanted to do it, it was important, but really it should have been the National Health Service doing that, but we had to pick it up, because it was a problem.
I don't know what the question was, but they can tell you one piece it was a story. One day, I received a phone call from a president from mainland university. And he asked, is a he, as I review the gender, it's not it, it's he, who asked me the question is that I have a student who wanted to graduate from the university because he satisfied all the requirements by attending MOOCs. He said, I received all the credits, he wanted to graduate. Then that gave me the chance to ask myself, I said, first, I didn't know how to answer his question because we had no such examples at that time.
Does everybody know what MOOCs are?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
We should ask
Massive
the other
online
way.
course.
Does anyone not know what MOOCs are?
Okay.
People are tentatively putting that.
All right, some
Sorry.
tentative,
Sorry about
some
that.
tentative MOOC innocence.
Anyway, so he took all the requirements, prerequisites, and he wanted to graduate after attending university only 1 year. Okay. I didn't have the experience. I didn't know how to answer this question. Then I started to think about the purpose of university. Is university just about taking credits, getting all the courses passed, and to get a certificate and graduate? So what was university for? That's why I mentioned about relevance and impact.
Can I move us on? Because I think there's my next question precisely follows on in a way from this, which is, do universities expect to go on being residential? Does online teaching mean that actually you don't need residential universities? I'd put up a suggestion that we've got some experience with that because of what we had to do during COVID. But I think your example absolutely leads into this. Do we want our students to be there, or is it fine for them to be, if quite possibly in a different time zone, different place, looking at recorded lectures, and they can still learn everything?
Right.
So let's follow
how
your
you
question
sort
that
of,
way.
Assess a university, how successful a university is. Is it by ranking, or is it just by number of students it graduates, or the amount of money it generates, or how do you assess the university, right? So by the people does university produce, right? But there's no ranking system to look at that except the student-teacher ratio, all right? So for a university who has impact, so you look long-term. Okay.
I mean, I will come up with some other suggestions.
Right.
So
So therefore, so university, I mean, everybody knows that. It's not just about getting subjects passed, right? So it's a life, is where you train people to be a person who's useful. So what's a useful person? Is that like a robot that can produce, to do jobs? Or just solve problems? Or what is this? A society always say, well, we need universities to generate future economics of a city, or prospect of a country, and so on and so forth. But how do you measure that? I think it's really based on the experience, all the education, all the principles you had in the past. Okay? And slowly build on it. You're not going to sort of all of a sudden discover something new. Right? So it has to really work on, as a university tradition was the mission, was the vision of a university. You work on that. In the long run, yes, you will produce good students if you believe in what you're doing.
So,
Nancy.
yeah, I think there's room for both, even within the same university, because students want different things. Some want to be fully immersed in a residential experience. Others, we run global MBAs across the world that are largely online. Do them here, in fact, in Hong Kong. And I think, there are some students who can't possibly spend 3 years at a university, or 4 years, or 5 years, or whatever. They're just not able to. But it's interesting. It must be more than 20 years ago that everybody was saying this will be the demise of residential universities. And it has not happened. If anything, they've expanded. There are more of them. So I don't see any loss of appetite for that immersive experience. And like I always say to students when they graduate, if you leave here just with a degree and a bit more earning power and nothing else, we failed you. Because a lot of that experience, particularly, is team working, is volunteering, is doing other sports, all sorts of other things, which are very difficult to do. But I still think different people want different things.
Exactly.
That
I'm
said,
a geneticist, so I believe in the people are all different.
almost all people. My identical twin brother, I'm sure, will dispute it.
I can argue with you on that.
Very good. All right. Epigenetics will take care of that. But Nancy, going back to COVID and what that told us about online learning, what did your students think about not being in residence at Manchester?
Well, actually, they were, most of them, because we locked down while they were all there. And then the second lockdown...
Sorry, Ben, what did they think about being imprisoned in Manchester?
They did not like it at all. And actually, it took quite a long time to recover when we opened up again. The Students' Union noticed a big drop in footfall. And they weren't attending lectures as much, they were more isolated, and despite everything we could do to support them, they really did not like the experience. But of course, they lost all of the social experience as well as the teaching experience. And an awful lot of being at university is learning to teamwork, to interact with others, to be challenged by different people with very different experiences, very different opinions. Those are part of a university education.
I mean, I'll make a pitch to many of the people on my right of the room to say, when you go to university, it's not all about just doing your course. And when Nancy talks about social, that isn't just, I mean, in a UK one, it's not just hanging around in the bar, though a lot of it turns out to be. But what it is, what you really benefit from, is talking to people who are as smart as you or smarter and are doing different things. What you'll learn directly from universities is today's answers to yesterday's questions, but what you can learn from your peers at university is completely different ways of thinking that you never could have come up with on your own. So, I mean, for me, residence still matters. Do it, but make the most of it.
Well,
So,
I must say that when you talk about residence university, you mean that in-class learning versus online learning.
Yes, I
right?
mean, in-class learning and living there.
Yeah, no, not necessarily, because a lot of universities don't have really residence, right? They still travel, right? A lot of universities in London.
Yeah, in the UK, a lot of, not all, but many of the students at Manchester actually live away from home. And that is still quite a big thing, to live away from home.
Yeah.
Not all, some can't afford it.
Yeah, I agree, but there's a definition of a residence university. That means you really have to do in-class learning, and then all staying together, working in a group, and have a student life and all that, right? So Morningside College is different, right, from other colleges in Hong Kong.
Different and better.
Yeah, right.
But let's take this line of thought a bit further. Let's move into AI. Fine. Is AI going to put us all out of a job?
No, I don't think it is. Just as the internet didn't. We just have to adapt to it, learn how to use it. People are still social. They want to talk to each other. They want to disagree. They don't want to just interact with a computer. And use, yes, there are risks with AI, but there are also huge opportunities as well.
And
Yeah. So I just asked a question earlier when we were chatting. I said that students must know about a computer program called Turnitin. Okay, for those the teachers in the audience, you used Turnitin 30 years ago, 20 years ago. Because AI or computer-generated answers were available 20, 30 years ago. Why only today, right? So it's not just the amount of information you can regurgitate or to produce in the report, but rather all the other assets you learn from universities. Sometimes, I don't want to go back how we advertise, this is Hong Kong U, its own education program. One of the things is that you teach students learn to learn. Okay? Wow, you come to learn. Why do you teach them learn to learn? But if you know how to learn, then you can learn much more. Just like you teach a person how to fish, right? You can fish more. You just not give them a fish. And then the second thing is to make a person more adaptive to changing environment. Nobody could anticipate what's going to happen, say, tomorrow, a week from now. Okay, when you talk about jobs missing or disappearing, but there are more things disappearing too, or more things coming up. So the world is changing. Therefore, we're talking about a changing world.
But do you think that universities are ahead of the game or behind the game when it comes to modifying their curricula in order to think about topics that really aren't going to need humans, subjects that aren't going to need humans to do them anymore. My, favorite example would be if I were having a brain tumor scanned, I'd rather have an AI system look at the scan than a radiologist. Radiologists are very nice, but they don't have the experience that an AI system has. So do you think there are areas where we should be changing our emphasis so that we concentrate on where we really make a difference?
Yes, I do, and I think we're somewhat behind, but running fast to catch up. An interesting example you gave, because in medicine, of course, as you know, there's huge resistance to change from all the general medical councils. So
this is surely news to everyone in this room.
Trying to get a change in the curriculum for medicine is not an easy task, and the same for other regulated courses. But I think universities are now running pretty fast to catch up and getting much more savvy about the sort of courses that are available, while maintaining what is really important, which is the in-person experience. And Ronnie's brother Gerald, who was mentioned earlier, gave a brilliant talk at Stanford on the value of AI. And he concluded,
Perfect.
What we need to learn is what AI can do and what the professors can do. And they're different, and it may change with time. But that's critical. And it will be difficult for some of our professors because they may not want to change.
Let me just follow one of Gerald's thoughts there to see what you make of it. One of the things he suggested was that AI can give you the sort of experience that one-to-one tuition can give you. I was lucky enough to have been educated through one-to-one tuition, and I have a question about how you do it in AI, and the question's really this. What do you think an AI-managed tutorial would do for someone who comes up with a really outlandish idea? Would AI tend to pull you back into the population norm? Or would it spot that this is the one outlandish idea that we should follow?
Okay.
Lap-Chee, go on.
No, because I thought about this question quite some time ago. I have a friend who was in game business. There's computer games. And this company is making lots of money. I don't want to say the name. Okay, then I say, look, you guys create all the games for children. They get addicted to the games and so on. Why don't you do something good? Change the games into teaching. Okay, so the end game is to get to whatever. Okay, but to go to that whatever, you have to go through all the steps. Why don't you put all the steps, all the learning requirements, all the learning goals you have? So you change the subject to become really personalized, right? But someone has to program this. Who can do this? Okay, professors can do it, right? Or good educators, curriculum producers can do it, but you can do it just once. So what next? I said, professors are still very useful because their presence in the classroom is not just to transfer information, but there to inspire, right?
So,
Yes,
I'm not an expert in AI. My strong suspicion is, at the present time, it's not up to really recognizing an outlandish idea, but I doubt if it will be very long before it is at the rate. But I think what Gerald said was, when you compare one-to-one for a student with AI, it is not as good as one-to-one with a tutor, but it is much better than 30-to-1 in a classroom.
Yeah, I think that's entirely fair. And part of the whole story there was it does deliver individuated teaching experiences which take into account how you're doing, where you have doubts, where you need help. And in all of those respects, it's certainly better than watching me on a video.
And then, having done that, you then talk to the professor about your experience, what worked, what didn't work, and so you then get both interactions.
Yeah. So, okay, can we move a little further into the social media then? Because do you think, in principle, when the social media sort of burst upon the scene, there was a great feeling that this is a way in which we have a much better connected world. But do you think it has actually helped to inform and unite student bodies? Or does its potential for polarization disrupt campus harmony and squeeze out reasoned discussion and make it harder to sit down and think calmly through things? I mean, you've probably had experience with some of this. Can you tell us?
Oh, yes. I think both, actually. I mean, I think student groups, alumni groups are enormously beneficial. And I know here and in the mainland, you know, alumni working together, hugely beneficial. And we set up groups, for example, for the class in geography or the class in there, and they can interact. The difficulty, I think, comes when you get what's often called echo chambers. So like-minded people all get in one group and nobody challenges them. And also, I think for students, we keep telling them that be careful with social media because any future employer is likely to look at your social media profile. They seem to feel that they're there with their friends and not realizing the whole world can actually see what they've said, and they might later regret that. So I think there's some way to go to get more responsible use of social media, particularly among students. So to all of you, be careful what you write on social media. Many employers will go and look at it before they employ you.
You can pay someone to help to clean it, but don't go there. But that's another point that I think is important, which is whose responsibility should it be to help to teach people how to assess what they can find on the internet? I mean, I think this should start really early in education. I don't know whether schools teach it. CUHK has got a course that's trying to do it. Did you have courses like this? Are these things that you've been working on?
More recently, yes, but not for very long. And I think very few schools in the UK are doing it. I think a few are waking up to it now.
Oh, I have no idea what they're doing recently. Sure. But then we talked about fake news in those days. And then I think to teach a student or a student learn to be critical is very important. I would say that you critical on other people, you're critical on yourself too, right? So that goes both ways. I think social media, I think you're looking at the bad aspect of it, if I put it that way. But you can look at the good aspects of social media. Universities use social media these days to broadcast the information. The governments use that. Everybody uses social media. It's on the good side. But then how do you distinguish?
Well, I say good and bad.
Exactly. But then students,
like most things.
Yeah, students have to learn to be critical. You're critical, then more likely you're going to be successful in the future.
Okay, so looking at good and bad, you're both in the life sciences, Asia and Europe. Do you think it's possible that current political changes in the USA offer opportunities for life sciences in Asia and in Europe? Is this a time when by welcoming intellectual migrants, we could really raise the level of research in Asia and Europe? I mean, could this even be a pivotal moment like the late 1930s were for atomic physics? Discuss.
Simple answer, yes, I think it is. And that's already starting to tell. And I think it goes way beyond life sciences. I think it's across many disciplines.
But international collaboration, student exchange, they always are beneficial to education. Mm-hmm. I think I remember that we always encourage students to go out to study for a term or half a term to gain experience, to live in an uncomfortable, unfamiliar environment. You're always good for them, even though I'm sure that you guys travel a lot, but that's different. The study abroad is very different. So, but then the collaboration, I think that's really the norm. I think what happened in US, in Canada, even in UK. In Canada, I just returned from Toronto, and then they're talking about courses closing, universities closing, okay? And then other places have the same problem, okay? Universities actually closing because of lack of students.
So that's the demographic change.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's not that. Because of foreign students are not.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the lack of international students.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we'll also have trouble with demography in due course, as
we
Japan
will.
already has. But Okay, so you would be saying that international exchange really is already seriously threatened?
Yeah, there's a problem. But I also work in Zhejiang University. And over the COVID period, it was very interesting. There was a program that was in collaboration between a US university and Zhejiang University. Students supposed to stay 2 years here, 2 years there. Okay? And students were not allowed to travel to the US at that time. And then the students had to stay in Zhejiang University to take courses online in Zhejiang University. So all of a sudden, other universities find out that you can actually do it that way. So they ask their students to study at Zhejiang University, attend the same courses. So universities are band together to take this opportunity to actually save a lot of travel costs. But then the students that all still have a university environment. They stay at Zhejiang University and Haining, if you want to know. Yeah, it's very interesting time. Everybody is adapting, moving, and then, but it's not really a good thing. You want to have your own student body working together, and then to work with others and collaboration. But then this is very unusual times. I still remember the COVID, of course, happened recently, but people forgot about SARS. The SARS, severe acute, whatever, respiratory syndrome. Right. So that, Hong Kong U was the first university to say, let's stop classes. And everybody said, oh, why is that? I said, well, it's serious, stop it. And then, of course, it went away. But I say that the infectious diseases, all things you can control, that things will go away, right? But then some of the things may be long-lasting. I think this is what university is facing, right? Some of the things may have long-lasting effects. Social media, the bad side of it, or the AI and so on, would be affecting a lot of universities running. And we talk about professors refuse to change because it's a job. You change the AI teaching, they may lose their job. But then they have to change the teaching, they have the lecture prepared. I remember when I was a student, okay, the university professors, they had the notes from way back, from their own teachers perhaps. But we all graduated.
Medical schools. I think in a moment we should open the floor, open up for questions from the floor. But I guess I just want to ask both of my discussants one last sort of personal question. I think I probably know the answer, but I'm not sure, so I'm really interested. Would you do it again?
Yes.
No.
There
And
you
yourself?
have. There you have. Me. Yeah, I absolutely would. I can't think of any other.
I put it really sarcastically. Yeah. No, meaning that I don't think my age and things.
No, if I was 10 years younger, I'd do it again.
Yeah. No, I recommend to anybody here, if you want to take up a profession which is always interesting, constantly changing, and this year's problems are not the same really as they were even last year, let alone 10 years ago, and topics in which you can answer questions that 10 years ago you wouldn't have known even could be asked. It's fantastic. Do it if you can. Right, on that, I'm very happy to open up the floor. Questions, if you have them. So I'll give you a minute to pluck up your courage. And then, Ben, CUHK librarian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, we met.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you very much for your talk. I have a question about virtual staff. So about 6 or 7 years ago, there was a piece of research done in the US asking a group of students about who's your favorite departmental assistant? And virtually all the students on that particular course said it was Lisa, whomever it was. And then the university revealed that Lisa was actually a chatbot. She was an AI. And so that because she could always answer the questions and had the right answers. From the discussion you've had, it already sounds like the future of universities does have virtual staff embedded, and I'll be interested in your thoughts on that. But my real question is, do you envisage in the future of universities that there might be some virtual students that might benefit either faculty for practice, to kind of get some practice, or might benefit student cohorts to get a peer that is asking bright questions and that you might learn from?
Absolutely. I think, the opportunities are endless and are growing all the time. So to have, a virtual student body that maybe argues with the current student body or one-to-one with them or does something different. But I'm surprised in a way that in answering questions, Lisa is good because she will answer immediately, of course, and a member of staff can't do that. But when we ask our students, they always vote for Teachers of the Year, and these are the people who spend more time face-to-face with students or go that extra mile to help them when they need it. And it's always somebody they see regularly.
When I heard the word library, I couldn't stop thinking about the future of libraries. What's the future of a university library? You still need a library, right? You find all the information you need on the internet.
And yet.
So I ask your opinion.
Yes, if you're a scientist, yes. If you're a historian or somebody who works in many areas in the humanities, that real book, that old book, matters enormously. We have a...
You like the smell?
No, everything about it. We have a phenomenal library called the John Rylands Library, which I keep trying to get Ronnie to visit, because we have one of the biggest collections of old Bibles in the world. And now these are incredibly valuable to the people who study religions.
Yeah, but the information, if they're all digitized.
No, but okay, you can do it digitally. No, it's more than that. It's to know the age of it, to feel the history of it, to know this was the first edition of that Bible in the UK, or it was one of the earliest printed documents. I mean, I'm a scientist, but I really appreciate that.
I think we have to make space for aesthetics here.
Yes.
And I am told that I haven't looked in this book, but you have. If you look at the book in the Royal Society in London, where the new members have signed their names, the name under Newton is more or less invisible because everybody wants to see Newton's signature. Yes. And they've rubbed out slowly by endlessly pointing at it. So even scientists can't resist it.
It is amazing seeing that book, which you have to sign with a quill and ink. And so you're incredibly nervous that you're not going to blot it, because this book is 360 years old.
You know what happened to mine?
Yeah. Go on.
It caught the material.
Oh, no.
A splash.
That's widely thought to be vandalism. I will add, there was a debate in Oxford about this kind of topic where Bodley's librarian brought out a little book and just held it. No one knew what it was. That was a book which had marginal notes by Newton. And everybody, that's what everybody wanted to see. Of course you could digitize it, but...
It's not the same.
Yeah,
it's like the same. It's not the same seeing a photograph of the Mona Lisa as seeing it in person.
Fair enough. Well, right, we won't go about the recent rediscovered younger one. Okay. I'm tempted just to go a little further on digital libraries. Yeah.
No, okay, well, if I answer the question before you ask the question?
Almost. No. I mean, I think it is an interesting question. It seems to me that libraries, in part, are repositories, as museums are, of extraordinary things from the past, but they're also really important curators. And it seems to me that the curation, including of scientific material, is a really important component that we need professionals to do for us.
And they're also places of study. Our libraries now have many study areas. Groups can come and book rooms and study together with interactive Wi-Fi and so on. So, they serve a number of purposes. So don't worry, I don't think the library's dead.
No, I'm not against libraries, okay? But I just posed the question, okay?
Yep.
But then...
Well, that's part of your role.
Yeah.
But do you want to answer it yourself?
No, I will respond, okay? So the library changes the role, right? So now libraries, in Hong Kong we discussed it 20, 30 years ago, calling it a learning commons, right? Libraries are still very, very valuable. The library budget, unfortunately,
just goes up.
Exactly. And then the use of library dropped, and then the budget kept on climbing by percentage increase.
Our libraries are full.
Okay. Anyway,
full.
but
if you
We're
want,
human beings. Okay, I change the subject, okay? You talk about you and I have a good chemistry. What is chemistry? Chemistry is not really just the chemical molecule, just how we interact with each other. I think we interact with materials, we interact with old books. I purposely use a smell. Smell is the most sort of a primitive sense. Yeah, animals smell, sniff, right? So the smell, okay, just really drive your brain in a different sort of a level. So therefore,
it's
whether you
only
and
two
I,
synapses from your olfactory system to your hippocampus, center of your memory.
exactly. So we have good chemistry, we work along well, right?
So, one suggestion. We're still looking for questions, but I
Sorry.
don't know how many vice chancellors we've got in the audience. But Duncan is a current one, and you might want to get his view. I stood down 9 months ago.
Shall we put Duncan on the spot, just quickly? Duncan, you're on the spot.
Sorry, Duncan.
You have 40 seconds max.
As in, will libraries survive?
No, universities general. Well, whatever you like.
Well, that's a big one. Yeah, I think libraries have been doomed many times over, and for all kinds of reasons, and books have been burned and banned and censored and thrown out, and yet they come back because I think ultimately, human beings don't only need to sort of process knowledge, they kind of need to feel it and be in front of it, and it needs to be embodied to be really learned. So I think that's going to be true for some time yet, and that applies, I think, to learning as well. Digital campuses will grow, but human beings need to be in the presence of each other to learn, and I think that will stay for quite a long time, for some time to come.
I mean, I'll just echo an element of that, both on the motivational side, but also, I think, importantly, the sort of self-rating against your peers. I think one of the very difficult things that students tend to find when they first go to university is that they've been used to coming top at school without trying very hard. And then they find themselves in a group where they try really hard and they're still somewhere in the middle and they feel really miserable about it. And part of what we as teachers have to teach the students who are there is that being in the middle of another group of incredibly highly selected people is a fantastic success, and it's a great place to be. And it's not a sign that something's gone wrong with you. So, all right, that's a thought for the future, for when you go to university and start worrying. Alice.
Thank you. My question, when you guys were talking about changes, professors willing to change, to grow with the time, my question is about tenure. How do you think that, going back to my university, some of the professors with tenure, they're more reluctant to change. And I understand the ideas of tenure chiefs, freedom of expression and so on and so forth. But in the U.S., many of the institutions are attacking that institution, tenure professors. So how do you think about this topic? Is tenure here to stay, or are they going to be on its way out?
I'll offer that to both my colleagues, and then I'll have a shot at it myself. Do you want to start, Nancy?
Okay, fine. The general situation in the UK is staff are tenured, at least once they get to a certain point. Now, there is a risk and a benefit of that. The risk is that they can get, a bit lazier or less committed. The benefit is the knowledge of stability rather than always worrying about are they going to get the next one. Now, we have some that are not tenured, that are on rolling contracts, for example, but the majority are. So, and I think the US may be changing now because certainly speaking to a few people from the US who are not tenured and are now very, very worried indeed. They didn't used to be, but they are now. So I think pros and cons.
Well, mixed feelings. I think tenure is a system, and therefore people who live in the system will refuse to change. We'll talk about it earlier. But then peer pressure. Okay, you have people around those professors, so they have people pressing on them. So they may find other things to do, and then a lot of professors, they were really good teachers, they're good educators, but they may not be good researchers. Nowadays, you didn't get into the topic about university ranking, right? So most of the
We'll
people
save
talk
that
about,
to put people off their dinner.
right, and they talk about the university. It's all about research, not about education, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I've got a comment which is really to think about tenure partly as part of the reward for what you want your academic staff to do. And people normally think of tenure as a way in which academic staff can then do what they want regardless of what you hope they'll do. But I sometimes think to myself, I don't know what the mean age of mathematicians who make great discoveries is, but it's somewhere pretty low down in the 20s or maybe early 30s, I think. How do you persuade somebody to give you their most creative period of life and then fire them a few years later because they're no longer effective researchers? I mean, what you do is you get your Fields medalist, you offer them tenure, they then, well, in this case, set up a mathematics institute, or they do teaching, or they do mathematics policy. But they're not driving mathematics anymore, and yet we have taken out of them their very, very best moments. I think it's part of in some sense, it's part of a reward system and should be understood as that. That why would anybody do it if they know they'll have no job by the time they're 33?
And despite tenure, many academics work incredibly long hours, not because they're told to, not because they're even asked to, but they're just incredibly self-motivated, whether it's to see their students out of hours or to do that extra research project or to write a grant at midnight. You know, a lot of them, and again, that's a trade-off.
Yeah. No, there's a widespread use of universities, which is to take single-issue fanatical obsessionals, keep them off the streets, and put them somewhere where they can't do any real harm.
I couldn't possibly comment.
That's why we have vice-chancellors. Good, a hand there. Two hands. This one first, then there. That's only a matter of timing, not propinquity.
Hi, Professor Nick. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
When you guys were discussing the use of AI as a sort of like replacement, I shouldn't use that word, but like something similar to one-to-one in-person tutoring. So I was wondering, like, okay, let's say I'm writing a philosophical essay, and like I might need some idea. So I type into my maybe ChatGPT to get some idea, and I might get something out of it. It might not be like some concrete facts or data that some researcher has discovered in the past, and then ChatGPT just use it. It might just be some general idea on how I can structure my essay or how to make this argument sound. My problem is that does that, in some sense, is jeopardizing the intellectual integrity to you?
Fine.
No, I don't think it is. I think you're using it as a source of ideas, not taking an answer from it. And there are lots and lots of sources of ideas. You could have gone to the library and read 6 papers. You could have gone to Wikipedia. You could have done all sorts of things. This is just one way of doing it. And if you take it, and you're sitting there with a blank piece of paper, you think, where do I start? And you ask ChatGPT, and as you say, it might not give you anything that helps you, but it might just give you a couple of bullet points that get you thinking and therefore help you. But I would say, if you're going to be honest, say at the end of your answer, I got some ideas from ChatGPT, because then at least you're being honest about it.
I should expand on my point earlier by using a game system for education purpose. Okay, so when I'm talking about AI, use of AI in education, that means the teaching of a whole course. The AI would actually help you learn step by step. I mentioned about different ways to get to the final point, right? You play a game, you don't have to follow the same steps all the time. You can do different ways. But going different ways, you still learn. At the end, you learn everything, and then you get your recognition at the end, right? So your problem, as I mentioned earlier, is just to solving one single problem. I actually tried DeepSeek. Asked DeepSeek to write a speech for me. I did not use it. Okay, because it gave me all the answers that you expect. right? So the teacher will be looking at things that is not anticipated from the database, from what you learn, what you know. But then AI in education, what I meant earlier, was actually to help you learn. That's what Gerald thinks too. So when I read his piece, the one-to-one tutorial.
I mean, a thought that comes to me following what Lap-Chee's just said is that I once had complaints from students at Oxford. They couldn't find a marking scheme that would let them figure out what marks they get in finals. And Oxford finals are essays. And I said to them, well, the reason that's so is because we choose you, because we think you're capable of independent and original thought. And that means we don't know what you're going to say. We have to evaluate it once you have. Anyway, right, there was a question back there. Good.
Hi, I'm Carolyn. I'm one of the fellows this year at Asia Society. And I have a response about the topic about libraries, and I have two questions for you. First, regarding libraries, responding to Dr. Rawlins and also to Duncan, I believe that libraries are more important ever now. And the reason is because LLMs are all trained on data sets from libraries. What that means is the biggest problem, well, let me get back a second. With AI now, transformer technology used to be on attention mechanism alone. This is Google's essay in 2017. So any data that will create, that's what feeds the LLM. But in 2023, Microsoft came out with a new paper called Textbooks Are All You Need, emphasizing high quality data over any data, over synthetic data. The biggest problem the LLMs have today is the lack of information and data and the not enough data. So to me is libraries and research by professors, by graduate students are more important than ever, that they have to be part of and be absorbed by AI today, as opposed to otherwise you get low quality data from comments, like YouTube comments, Twitter comments, Reddit. That's why Sam Altman bought Reddit, right? And that's also why Elon Musk bought Twitter, is to have a lot of data. So my point is, how are universities responding to digitizing and speeding up that input of data into LLMs? And then my second question is a bit more broad. It's about the rise of anxiety, mental health disorders around young populations today. How are universities responding to that and encouraging not just knowledge, education, but resilience and teaching about overcoming adversity?
Okay, so clearly we'll split those into two separate components. The question about whether there's a university mental health crisis is certainly one that's widespread.
There's not a university mental health crisis. There's a young people's mental health crisis.
That's fine. That includes universities.
Actually, the rates of serious mental health amongst university students in the UK is significantly lower than age-matched students not at university. So actually, if you're going to have anxiety and mental health problems, you're better at university, possibly because we all have huge support systems for them now, whereas if you're not, so...
Yeah, it's all right. We can discuss that one later too.
Ascertainment bias, sometimes I say.
Yes, but let's start with the first question about what we're all doing to get on with digitization, so that what the large language models use is the best available rather than whatever it can get.
So, I mean, universities have been doing this for quite a long time now.
But
it's
fast
expensive.
or slowly?
No, we think fast, but probably too slow, actually, because the resource involved and the time involved. It's a big task. I mean, just trying to digitize, for example, all our collections in our museum and our library and our art galleries. It's a vast. It's gone a long way, but there's a long way still to go.
So I mean, that is the not missing information from the printed form into a digitized form, and then we're talking about the rate is changing. The information is still there, how you look at it, how you use the library, in the traditional sense, or library then in a new world sense, a new norm sense, okay? So, but then to the other question, I think is serious because of the pressure getting into a good university. The really top university, I say, students with sort of a mental they need mental help a lot more than a lowly ranked universities. Okay, I put it that way. I don't mean to any distinction here because of the peer pressure of getting into, say, Harvard, okay, or to Oxford. Okay,
Now
pressure
you're getting
from
serious.
getting the parents, okay, are involved in this.
Is there evidence for that?
Yes.
That
Yes.
there is more mental health issues at the top universities than the lower ranked ones?
Because
I know the reason you're saying, but I just don't know. I've never seen the evidence.
No,
I
I'm
haven't
not
seen it.
talking about evidence. We're talking about university presidents talking to each other. Okay? Talking with each other.
I'll stand back and let
okay,
them talk.
I get into dangerous area. I should stop.
You might be true. I've just
But
not seen any evidence.
I want to reinforce one of Nancy's comments. I mean, there was a great concern about suicide rates in British universities, and Bristol University in particular was picked out. But humans are very good at detecting patterns that don't exist. It's one of our primary cognitive processing biases. We see a little cluster of something and we think it means something. And when you look seriously at the data, as Nancy says, the rate at Bristol was below the age-matched national figure.
Overall,
So-
it's about
yeah.
half.
Yeah.
The suicide rate in universities is about half that in the age-matched population who are not at university.
But it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. And there are lots of interesting things to say about it. Again, we could take that discussion a very long way. We have time for a very quick question and a succinct answer, or both.
One quick question is about the case for the university as a monastery. So I think
A monastery?
monastery, yes. So I see parallels now with AI coming into place. It's almost like the Bible being written down, and how there is the availability of people to read the Bible back then, and then the church decided that there was a value to have a cloistered church where you have the Benedictines that are still memorizing the Bible, word for word, and then you have a very other branch of the church that's very much about making it accessible to everybody, practicing faith and knowledge in the profane, as apart from the sacred. So is there a value to preserving the sanctity or the sacredness of, let's say, tenure and memory, and maybe actually separating a part of academia that's completely removed from everything that we're talking about in AI and internet, maybe just like pure, a very romanticized idea of preserving the ivory tower? Is there any value to that?
There's value to preserving the discovery of knowledge for its own sake. Your example of the monastery is interesting because if you're going to liken a university to a monastery, then it has people from every religion and no religion, and all living together and all either getting on or having an argument about it, and that, again, is a great value. So I'm not sure. I don't like the ivory towers, though, because I think universities should be porous and should interact with their local communities and work with society. And I think certainly the University of Manchester places great importance on its local neighbours, some very poor neighbourhoods, and welcome them into the university and bringing in students from disadvantaged. So I don't like ivory towers. I wouldn't call a university a monastery, but I can see your analogy. Preserving the sanctity, I suppose, I could go with.
Do you want to comment?
I think put it another way. Now, academics sometimes speak in a different language. When the geneticists meet, we speak in a very different language than what we are using here. Like Ronnie said, we are speaking in languages that everybody could understand. But when geneticists talk about sort of all these questions, we respond quite differently. If I say we're driven by chaos, right? So and whatever, okay? So complexity is increasing every day. Okay, it's nature, right? Disorderly. But then you talk about the early treatment of knowledge in monastery. I mean, I just read Mendel's original papers, right? I don't know how many people actually read it. I did not read the original because it's in German. Okay, I read the English translation. Long, boring. Okay, but I noticed one thing inside is the persistence, the exactness of technology. The only he persists on his really careful selection of the seeds, okay, and careful description, okay, he succeeded in demonstrating very important principle of genetics, okay? But the original papers were really very boring, but people read it. And a teacher actually recommended the reading. Very famous university professor in North America recommended to his students. The student called this professor crazy, nonsense, okay? Because they thought there's nothing inside. But I gone through the paper, then you appreciate it. So therefore, we all look at things very differently. Okay, we're talking about diversity in genetics. We talk about, to get into the identical twins, but we're all different. How we are brought up, how we look at things. So I think the university is actually there for people to actually learn or know about himself or herself. It is really a very important time in your education life. Okay, I'm not saying that everyone has to go to universities. Okay, that's another thing. Okay, not everyone has an opportunity to do that, but then if you have a chance to go to a university, then I think you should benefit the most from it.
I'm going to ask Ronnie to make closing remarks, but before he starts, I'd just like to thank both my discussants very much indeed for what they've had to say. So, thank you.
I just have 3 quick comments. Number one, I just came back from Israel this morning, where I visited the new Israel National Library. The chairman of the board hosted me lunch together with the CEO. And after talking to them, I'm not convinced that there is a role for the libraries in the future. I think that for the old humanities, some old books, sure, but that's really a minority. The majority of it can be all digitalized and what have you. If it is a social place, well, we're going to just go to a commons or something. But anyway, at least the 2 librarians of the top caliber in Israel did not convince me of that. Nancy, however, I heard the most encouraging thing from you today. But I want to push back also, Nancy. You mentioned that university, Lap-Chee, I think you mentioned it too, that the mental illness problem these days is twice as much for non-university students than university students of the similar age. Well, in the UK, I used to serve on the board of the University of Southern California, my alma mater. And about 7, 8, 10 years ago, I attended a board meeting where they brought up the subject of mental health. And as you can imagine, university is an extraordinarily complicated institution, especially if you are, big American ones with 50, 60,000 students and all the big-time professors. And at that time, I was told that among the top universities in America, 60 to 70% of the students need some form of counseling, mental health counseling. And then a Harvard Medical School professor with whom I had lunch about 3 years ago told me that at Harvard, the number is closer to 80%, 70 to 80%. So, Nancy, it cannot be double. Maybe the British are a little bit more sane than the American, which is very possible. It is very possible. And I was trained in the United States, so maybe it explains a little bit why I'm a little whatever. But it is really an epidemic that is really rushing through the whole world. Whether you're in university or not, and that's really another subject that students, that I'm glad that I'm an old man, because I feel sorry for the young people having to face that. But I'm sure that they are a lot smarter than we are. They're more resilient than our generation, my generation is, and hopefully they will come out on top rather than like myself. Finally, I just want to recommend the article that Nancy and, well, actually all three of you mentioned. That is an article that was given at not UC Berkeley, Nancy. It wasn't Stanford, but doesn't matter. It's called Rethinking Clucker. Rethinking Clucker. The uses of the university in the age of generative AI. It was an inaugural Dean's Distinguished Lecture at Berkeley's College of Computing, Data Science, and Society. Do we have physical copies back there, Susan? Yes. Kevin? We have, okay. So if you want to pick up one, or we can give you the link. You can get on the internet yourself and read it. It's only 8 pages, so it's not too onerous, but I think it's definitely worth your while reading. Because otherwise you may think that all Chans are dummies. That's not true. My brother is smarter than his brother. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. My last job is to invite the 3 speakers to step forward to take a photograph, and then they will go downstairs to sit in the middle, and then all of us will be in the photo. Is that okay, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, all the speakers.
Okay. That's a big step. I'm going down this way. No, I think this is to be on stage at photograph.
Oh, on stage. Go on stage, sorry.
If you get vertigo, I'll hold you.
No, I'm fine. I just didn't want to jump down.
I'm afraid of height. Just close your eyes.
Oh, ready, 1, 2, 3.
I did.
Okay, one more time. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you.